What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 28 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where two best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide, wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined as always by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Stephen Radford.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello, Steve. It is a big week on the show here today. Of course, Horizon Forbidden West is out in the wild. We are just a few days out of release. We have both put a to-be-determined amount of hours into the game, and I am very, very excited. Yeah, a healthy amount. And I am very excited to chat with it about you, and we got some questions from the listeners. We're going to get to all of that in a second, but before that, let me just get these plugs out of the way. Remember that this episode of the FlipScreen Games Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of February. They are, of course, Mary Berry, Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valens, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Smilky Shake, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/FlipScreenGames. Y'all the reals to the real, and we appreciate your support of this fine program. Speaking of supporting this fine program, if you want to be like them and go and get some goodies, including maybe getting your name read on the air or getting access to our weekly exclusive Patreon podcast, One More Thing, go over to their Patreon, and at whatever level you can get some cool goodies. So do it up, please. We appreciate your support. But if you don't have any money to toss our way, there are a bunch of other ways that you can show your support or be involved with the show. Of course, like it, share it, subscribe, share it with a friend. Go and give us one of those 5-star ratings if you're an audio listener. However you listen to the show, go and click whatever metrics they need to click to show that you like the show, and we appreciate you. And if you've got a friend out there that you think would enjoy this fine program as much as you do, let them know. Tell them to come give us a listen. If you want to write in and be part of the show or join our community, there are a bunch of cool ways you can do that. You can get links for all of those things at our website, FlipScreen.Games. That includes writing into us at questions@FlipScreen.Games to be part of the show, just like a bunch of folks did this week, coming and joining our Discord, where we have an always growing community of big old dorks just like you trying to play some video games and have fun together. So if you want a safe, inclusive place for you to come and talk games or to keep the conversation rolling with us after the show, the Discord is the best way to do that. So come be a part of what we're building here at FlipScreen.Games. We appreciate you. So let's get into it. What we're playing, the main topic, it's all the same thing this week. It's Horizon Forbidden West. Of course, it is the sequel 5 years in the making to one of my favorite games of all time, Horizon Zero Dawn. Of course, one of the big heavy hitters on the PlayStation 4. One of the big exclusives back then. It was one of the big games shown off to be one of the first PS5 exclusives. Here we are, a little over a year later. It has finally made it across the finish line. Steve,
and it's not even a PS5 exclusive anymore. It's on PS4 as well, which crazy.
Hey, you know what? Given the shortages, that's good for the PS4 owners out there.
Yeah.
So wherever you are playing it, of course, it is one of the biggest games of the year, one of the biggest games of the moment. Steve, how I guess I know you're further than me, so do you want to ask where I am first to establish?
Yeah.
Okay.
We probably should figure out, because I'm 20 hours in.
Right.
I've done a good chunk of the main story and a bunch of side quests. So I'm curious where you are.
So I am, I think, probably closer to the neighborhood of like 5-ish hours in. Unfortunately, this game came out on my lovely fiance's birthday, and then I threw a birthday party for her the following day. So I was, I got to play a little bit on release day, but like I only got to the the credit roll of the title card and everything this morning, like when I started playing. So I'm a few hours.
There's even more of what I consider the intro section.
Yes.
I think for me the game proper opens when you get the glider. Have you got the glider?
I haven't yet. I believe I'm nearing that point because I am pretty sure so there's an event in the beginning of the game that you're building towards in kind of that introductory area. I have just completed all of the things I need to do to go and trigger the meeting. You know what I'm talking about. So that I'm imagining is the end of the tutorial, right? Is probably the and that'll be when I get to the true Forbidden West. Because right now I'm still in that opening valley.
There's a gate you go through that they won't open for you until you do all of those tasks, and then they open that gate, and that's when you're kind of in the Forbidden West, and you can then explore to your heart's content, which is cool. And that's when you see all of the new machines and things like that.
I've already encountered several new machines, so I can comment on some
in
of
this
those.
one. They've like replaced it with the burrower, which is amazing.
Interesting considering they're like one of the most iconic, ones from the original. But the burrower's like, it's like, oh cool, what if it had like 5 more powers? What the hell? It's good. I like that about it. Like, I feel like the machines I'm encountering are kind of more deadly from the start, which is cool. Because not that it.
Yeah, do you know, I agree. Yeah, but like the intro for me as a whole, I saw some people on my Twitter complaining that they thought it was boring and too long. I actually really enjoyed it. I liked that they didn't do they flipped it on its head. Like, how do we teach the player who maybe hasn't played the first game all about what Aloy can do without making it, contrived in the story? And it was great. It's like, Val, here's a focus. I'm going to show you how to use it. Yeah. And they really like flipped it on its head. Like, give the focus to someone else and show them how to use it. And then he'll also hand you some weapons and teach you how to use those. And you learn some of the new skills that you get, like the pool caster. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that first intro section.
I agree. Fair. Yeah, I don't know. We'll talk about some of the criticism around the game later, but largely, I think historically people like to criticize Horizon for things that other games do exactly the same way. But Horizon is held to a standard that they're not held to for some reason. Breath of the Wild has a 3-hour tutorial, and nobody seems to complain about that.
Yeah. And I think this tutorial is a lot more enjoyable than Breath of the Wild. Having gone back and replayed Breath of the Wild recently, it's not fun to go through that. It feels like you have no powers whatsoever because you don't, and you're slowly acquiring them. And whereas in Horizon, I wasn't left feeling that. Like, I already knew the controls. So it's like press R3, I'm in focus mode, and I can do everything already instantly. I don't feel like everything's been stripped off of me. Yes, I don't have all the weapons I had at the end of Horizon 1, but unlike in Breath of the Wild, where I don't have a weapon, I'm using a tree branch to attack people, I do actually have a bow and arrow, so I didn't feel so weak like I did in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I think for it being an opening section that has to contend with the fact that there are people who are going to jump into this game who have not played the original, right? Like, it needs to teach them the foundationals. And if you don't need that, I felt like it was pretty easy to like just kind of tune the advice out and just focus on the dialogue and like getting caught up with the narrative, which I liked. I felt like,
and I think that's the case throughout the whole of the game, to be fair. The way the tutorials are showed throughout the game, it's not intrusive. It's just a little box off to the side, and sometimes you have like one pop-up come up and you can read through it. But
you can also turn them
intrusive. Off. Yeah, you can. And I it was one of my complaints when we were talking about Pokemon Legends. I hated the fact that you would talk to someone, you talk to an NPC, they'd tell you exactly what to do, and then a box would show up that told you the exact
here's the same information, just in case.
Yeah. And I was like, for God's sake, you don't get any of that in this, No. Val will be like, oh, here's a weapon I found for you, and he'll hand it to you, and then it will teach you there and then, because there's like an environmental puzzle you have to solve. Like, you need to get through a wall. It teaches you how to use the pool caster. It teaches you then how to use the grapple hook. These are all new things that we didn't have in Horizon Zero Dawn. And it does a great job of explaining it by just having a little text box off to the left that says, hold R2 and then press triangle. And that's literally all you need to know, because you'll then learn by playing the game rather than it just being reels and reels of text or like a video clip or whatever it may be.
Definitely. And in general, I feel like that's been an addition that I've enjoyed so far with what I've experienced, like the environmental puzzles and like the climbing puzzles and stuff. I think based on some of the pre-release footage and like the fact that there is a glider and everything like that, I think there was kind of a thought like that it might be like more akin to free climbing in Breath of the Wild. And I think it's less that, and it's more because you can't just climb on any surface, right? Like there are specific cliff faces and things like that you can climb. But I feel like it's
Which
more
was the same in Horizon Zero Dawn, but rather than like in Horizon Zero Dawn where there was just loads of yellow paint everywhere, in this one you can like press on your focus and it will highlight the areas that
right.
Aloy can climb on, which is really cool.
Yeah, and it's a lot more dynamic, right? Because like in that it was, I think in the previous game, right? It was like kind of a lot more like Uncharted, right? Where it would be like, this is a specific place you can climb, and I feel like it's like that, but it's kind of elevated a little bit because you'll have like a cliff face where there are like multiple different ways you could potentially make your way up and kind of things like that. So I don't feel like it feels as restrictive as that, but it's not quite as free as it's Breath of the Wild. So anything that's not a slick metal surface, I can scale. I don't know that. I don't know. I don't know that like would have been the thing. Like I haven't really encountered a lot of situations where I felt like, oh man, like I really wish I could just climb up this right now. Like I feel like I pretty much anytime I've had a point of interest, right? Like there's been a path for me to get there. So I don't know if I'll feel like I want the free climbing more as I go, but right now it's not bothering me.
Yeah, having played for 20 hours, I've not once felt like, damn, I really wish I could free climb. But there's also, like you said, environmental puzzles. There's a ton of them in this. So there are ruins that are just environmental puzzles, and they feel like they've ripped off Far Cry 5's prepper stashes in a way that fits in with the narrative of the game. It's like a ruin, and there's a locked room, and in that locked room there's a prize, right? Which is exactly the same as what Far Cry 5's prepper stashes were. And you have to solve the puzzles, and it's often in a place you can't climb to. If you had free climbing where you could just climb on any wall or any surface, it would entirely break those puzzles. And so I'm glad that they didn't go with that route. It also feels more realistic that there are specific climb points and specific climb holes, like Aloy's actually climbing the face of a mountain.
Right.
Because you wouldn't just be able to climb anywhere or jump and just like keep jumping like you do in Skyrim to just like, cheese up the mountain. It doesn't work like that in real life. It really does feel, I really do have a sense of reality playing this. And there are points when you can rappel down as well, like you hook your pullcaster onto it, and down you go. You like grapple down the surface instead of grappling up the surface, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I don't know. I think having some of those limitations is good, right? Because like something that I really appreciate about Horizon, and I think like Aloy as a character in general, right, is like kind of, she's tough and she's really smart and resourceful, but she's not like invincible, right? Whereas like I very much feel like that, like even though in Breath of the Wild you kind of start out with nothing, right? And you're like, I have a stick, cool. You're very much like, oh, like, you're like the chosen one and you're magic and super strong and like, yeah, like you could have better clothes or whatever, but like ultimately you're ready to go whip Ganon's ass already, right? Like it's basically the kind of the thing. And like I think Aloy's definitely a character who's presented as being more like generally more vulnerable, like just in terms of the fact that like like every time she goes into a situation, right? Like the thing that she has that gives her the upper hand is her ability to like think, right? And like process a situation and like come up with a creative solution on the fly. And I like
she does
that.
have
I like
technology on her
characters
side
like
as well.
Sure, yeah. But I mean, even that, right? Like everybody in the world looks at that as like a superpower, but it really isn't. It's just that she's smart and she's not afraid of something, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's like the whole conversation she's having with Varl, right? Is like he still sees everything in her world as like mystic, right? And like that there's like this magical quality to the way that she sees the world. And he
calls it they all call it the second sight rather than
the anointed
focus.
one.
It's like this,
oh yeah, the second sight, right? Yeah, and like all that stuff, right? Like her ability to think on her feet, right, is like the thing that differentiates her from everybody else. And I prefer characters that are like scrappy and clever than just being like, oh yeah, like I'm just, I'm built like a brick shit house and that's like why I'm good, like again, right? Like something like a character like Kratos, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, he's a fucking god, right? And like, yeah, he has to overcome everything, but everything he overcomes is just from like sheer force of will, which is like fine, but like I prefer that Aloy has some of those kinds of like limitations and like, well, yeah, she can't just climb everything. She can't just fly. She can't just do this, you know, like she's got an uphill battle more often than not, right? Which I think makes it like satisfying to start the game and be like, oh yeah, like every encounter with a machine, I could easily eat shit and die if I make a mistake, to then being like, oh, I can take down a Thunderjaw by myself and not even think about it, right? Like that progression that you experience throughout the game is like very, very satisfying, I think.
No, I agree with you. I think the closest comparison I can make with another video game character is Lara Croft in the modern Tomb Raider games since the reboot. They both feel like real people, to me anyway. And I do think I side more with Aloy. I like her because she's got that personality. I know Asobi wrote on Twitter and was saying like he didn't know he got the like, wow, what an asshole impression. And I do think that was intentional.
Yeah.
And I think it goes to show that she's unapologetic. She doesn't take anyone's shit. And in this instance, I love the fact that it demonstrates how the dynamic is totally changed. Between Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West, everyone greets her with open arms as she goes to Meridian, and it's just like, wow, welcome, you saved us. Whereas in the first game, you get to Meridian, it's like, who are you, outsider? You're the outcast. We don't want you. You're just that Nora
Savage,
and
right?
Everybody totally changed. Yeah,
yeah.
You're that Nora Savage from the Savage East. Totally changed. Totally different dynamic. They actually listen to her. They respect her. And she can just tell people to shut up, and they will shut up because they respect her, and they won't put up with her shit. And I also loved the fact that in that instance, right, where she's telling the sun god guy to shh, it's like she's doing it because she knows that he knows this is all nonsense at this point, because he's seen the technology, he's seen like the reality and the what she can see with the focus and her saving saving the world, like everything he believes in. He must realize at this point it's all crap.
I don't know that everybody does realize it yet, though, is the thing, right? I think
that one guy, right? I think he does. The one that's like reads from the scrolls and stuff, that was like on that lift on the way down, and I really do think that.
Well, I don't know. Knows. Maybe, I don't know. I didn't get that impression just because he didn't even know who she was. And that's something that I think is interesting, where like I think there is like a select class of characters that is becoming aware of the reality of the world, but like even people who are close to her don't necessarily know what she knows. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, not what she knows, but I think they know to listen to her.
That's
and like
for sure.
And I think that I guess he gets told to listen to her. Like when he gets to Meridian and she arrives, like he's clearly been told like who she is, what she's achieved, what she's done, and he's there like waiting.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I don't know. I guess I'll have to see. I'll have to see how I feel about that a little bit later, because I've still got a little bit of time to spend with that character yet, it seems. But yeah, so we'll use a question here from Zaid as like a jumping off point about that, to talk a little bit about Aloy's character, because that's a point of contention depending on who you're talking to. And I have some thoughts about it. And I've got some hot takes, honestly. So, Zaid wrote and said, I, like many others, couldn't get into Zero Dawn, and I'm hearing some people can't get into Forbidden West. Is there anything specific in the game that you guys think makes people not get into it? It just seems like a generic open-world RPG IMO. I never finished Zero Dawn, but I think Aloy, while voice acted very well, is super bland and boring. I played for maybe 20 hours, and I couldn't vibe with her at all like I do when there's a set protagonist in an RPG. So, I think I have a lot of thoughts about that. So I think in Horizon Zero Dawn, I think one of the things that keeps people from connecting with Aloy as a character in some ways is I think that she's like a bit of a Mary Sue, right? Which is like a term for characters that like are just great at everything, right? Like they make the right decisions most of the time. They're good. They're generally like good natured. They want to help people. They're altruistic and like they excel at everything, right? She's a great shot and she's smart and she can figure anything out and she has, you know, a almost superhuman ability to accomplish things in a world where everyone else seems like helpless and hapless, right?
Yeah, but don't you think that all has like a reason behind it? Because
Yes.
she was an outcast, she had to work harder.
Right.
Like, there's reasoning behind the fact that she is the way she is. Like
Right.
she's had to work harder than everyone else. Like she wasn't entitled to what she should have been entitled to.
Right.
Like everyone else that she competes against.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I think that when you think about the way that she was brought up, right, and like who her parental figure was and like what Rost's personality was like, you know, it makes sense that she's a loner. It makes sense that she's, you know, not the most social character, that she's not the most friendly character, right? And I think that that's something that's in the few hours that I've gotten into this story, right? It's absolutely something that's being played like for character development. You know, Asobi, like you said, mentioned on Twitter that he felt like during some of the interactions that she seemed like a jerk, right? That like, oh, I like this supporting character. Like, why is she being rude to them or this or that, right? It's like, well, she has her reasons, right? And it's like, I feel like there are choices that have been made with her character, right? That people criticize as like, oh, this is bad character, where it's just like, no, I just feel like you're either not like getting what they're trying to say about the character or it's just not working for you. And like, that's fine, but like, that doesn't make her a bad character. And I think that there are a lot of characters in a lot of games that are written in a very similar way, but because they're like strong, silent white dudes, they get a pass on it. And that's something that's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way around the like conversation around her character, is that like there are a lot of video game protagonists who have all of those same boxes, right, checked. And that has always struck me as a little bit odd. But I also...
Well, I mean, look at Nathan Drake, for example, right?
Right.
'Cause he's exactly that. And he is the kind of, he's almost superhuman the way he can jump across those chasms and hold himself up with just like 3 fingers.
Right.
It's crazy what
and
he's
like,
able to achieve. And people just give it a pass.
And it's like...
Because he's got those quippy comments and
exactly.
stuff.
Right. And it's like, I don't know, Aloy doesn't do that as much as him, right? So that means she doesn't have a character? I don't know. That's odd to me.
Whereas I think her backstory, her character development, I think is probably second to none for me in video games. Like I really do believe that. I think the story they gave her, you got to see her grow from being a child to blossoming into this young adult, and then obviously you learn all of that other stuff about her in Horizon Zero Dawn, which I don't want to spoil because it is a lot to uncover.
And so I have 2 more things I want to say just before we get off of this, because I think that something that I feel about her character as well, right, that's being leveraged well in this game is I think that her tendency to shut people out and to bail on people and to, you know, want to go it alone and everything like that, I think it speaks to a few elements of her character, right? Those are all facts we know about Elizabeth, right? And her connection to that character is a core part of her identity, right? And I think that that's something that they're trying to build up as something that she needs to overcome, right? That like she has put the world on her shoulders, right? And at least, again, where I am in the game, right? In the last 6 months, she's been banging her head against the wall, trying to figure things out and failing and not getting anywhere towards her goal. And why is that happening, right? It's because she's stubborn. It's because she refuses to let anybody help. She refuses to let anybody in. And she wants to go it alone, right? Because she thinks that's the only way to get anything done. And as soon as she listens to somebody else and takes their advice and allows like a friend to offer a hand, right, she gets a break in the case and she's able to move forward again. And that's...
but she's also been burnt, right? Because we saw that in the first game. You know, she listened to this mysterious
right,
man on her focus, and it was just he burnt her a couple of times because he was clearly out for himself,
right?
And I think part of that is like can she trust people? Because she trusted Roast, and he went. He's not in her life anymore through no fault of his own, but she's left on her own, and she's lived most of her life on her own because of that. And she probably has these issues with trusting people. But you're right, they are definitely addressing that. You saw that right at the beginning with Val. When Val showed up, it's just like, oh, wow, okay, what are you doing here? And like, he addresses the fact that he looks different because he hasn't been able to shave because he's been coming out west.
I think he looks great with that beard. I don't think you should shave it. Hot take. He looks great.
No, he looks way better without the beard.
Oh no, you're in good company. Aloy seems to agree.
And it definitely gets addressed more throughout the game. Like, I've just done a quest where I was specifically told, like, Ayla was like, oh, I'm going to go on my own. And Ayla was specifically told, no, you can't go on your own. Like, you need to take someone with you. You're not going to be able to do it on your own. And she eventually gives in and agrees to take other people with her on that quest, which I think she wouldn't have done previously as a character.
Right. And I think that journey is something that that's a huge part of her development as a character, right? Is like she is learning to come out of her shell, I think, and to, reestablish the idea of trust, or the idea that like she could even have a life beyond this mission at some point, right? Like, she's a character who's always had a singular goal, right? When she was a child, it was training every single day to be in the proving so that she could have a chance at a life, right? And then that was taken away from her. And then she had this like insane magical destiny thrust upon her. And like, again, think about the conversation she has with is it with Varl or Erend? It's with Erend. Because Erend confronts her and he's upset that she left. And right, like he said, you left without even so much as a handshake, like to the people who like fought and bled beside you, right? And like, that's a major character flaw in her. And she's like surprised that he's upset by that, right? Well, yeah, because she's never had friends before. These are
like, that was one of those ones where you could choose as well. That was like one of those little role play elements, right? You could pick and choose. I went with the heart one in that instance.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
You can specifically go like, no, I'm gonna be a dick. I'm gonna play this as a dick, and I'm gonna use that part of Aloy's personality, which I like.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I think for me, like, I think the big thing that the big issue that I have with Aloy's character, and again, I think it feeds into this idea that Zayd and others have expressed, right? That she's like bland, is that I don't think that they've done a good job of driving home why she has like skin in the game, right? Or like conflict, because like her character is so assured, right? Because her purpose is so like huge, right? Like the idea of, well, my mission, I was born for this mission and it's to save the world, right? That is such a heavy, high stakes thing that it's hard to have her character have like doubt, right? Like she doesn't always necessarily like, she's very like, I'm going to figure this out. Like I have to do this. This is the only option, right? Like it's not, like I think about like a character like Jin Sakai in Ghost of Tsushima. And there are a lot of people that said that Jin was like a flat character as well. But one of the things that was praised for his character, right, is that like in his arc, he has a struggle built in because he's a samurai, right? And he's supposed to live by a code, and he's supposed to fight with honor, right? And he's not supposed to fight in a way that's like dirty or that gives him an upper hand. It's always about like fighting and fighting clean, and if you die with honor, right? But then him becoming the ghost, he has to throw out all these morals in service of a greater good, right? And that means going against this code he's lived his life by. It means going against his uncle who's been like a father to him. It's an internal struggle versus, his ultimate goal, which is to protect his people and his family and his legacy and history and everything he's been indoctrinated and born into, right? That's a strong character struggle that's rooted in the broader story, right? Whereas like Aloy's character struggle of being who she is and needing to grow and learn to let people in and all those things, like it is connected to her goal, right? Because letting those people help makes it easier to achieve what she wants to achieve.
Yeah,
but it's not.
I don't know if I agree with it, because in the first game, that her motivation wasn't that. Like, her big motivator was she was curious
About well, she wanted to learn her origins.
She wanted to find out who she was, and really the whole game is, who's my mother? Like, who are my parents? Where did I come from? Why was I outcast? And that was like the whole story.
But there's no conflict.
She finds
there,
out,
right? She doesn't have to make a choice. She just wants that, and it's the only thing she wants. So it's easy for her to dedicate herself to that wholly, right?
Yeah, but I don't see why people would have an issue with that. Well, I don't know why you need to have that kind of internal conflict with it.
I agree.
Conflict, I think.
I don't think it.
There are moments in this game where there are like internal conflicts, like 100%. Like there are points where she shows her vulnerability both physically and emotionally. Like there's points in the story where she does cast doubt on herself, or why she's the one that's got to do this, and can she do it on her own? And I like that, but I can't quite remember, and I'm sure there were moments in the first game like that where she doubted herself, and she spoke about it when she's taken on Hades.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's I think that element though makes it where she has that like almost like Girl Scout kind of like you can write it off in that way. I don't agree, right? I like her character a lot. I agree with you. But I think that's what people are tapping into. 'Cause it's like it's too her ability to just like be single-minded is like too simple, I guess. You know, and I don't know. Mm. For me, like I don't think that that's different than a lot of other characters who are singularly minded.
I don't think it's characters in any medium.
Like Batman is like that, right? Like Batman is a very like I'm driven by this war, and because of that, I hurt the people in my life that I care about.
I think a better example is like Neo in the Matrix. He's curious. He's curious his entire life, and he doesn't feel quite right. He doesn't feel like he fits in. And then eventually he's like given this information, and he's able to fit in and find his place in reality. I think that's the exact same thing with Aloy. Like she finds out who she is, and she realizes what her purpose and her destiny is in life.
And I think that's actually a great example, because I think similar to Neo, right? Like the Matrix is not really a character-driven story, it's a lore-driven story, and Neo is just the conduit through which we explore that world. Mm-hmm. Aloy is similar, right? Like ultimately the story is about Aloy because she is the actor in the story, but the story of Horizon Zero Dawn has always been just as much about the world and the lore as any one character, right? Like, yes, Aloy is the most important character for a lot of reasons, right? Namely being that we play as her, but also who she is, how she came to be, the reason she was born, all those things make her unique, right? But when you think about the first game, right, a huge part of the story is the mystery of, like, where are we and how did all this happen?
Yeah.
And, you know, why was she born in the mountain and all these things? And like, we have all those answers now. And that's what's so interesting is now the story, you know, like is, I think they're trying to make it more about Aloy because we don't need to introduce as much in this game, right? Because we know all those things. You know?
No, way off. They introduce a lot.
That's exciting. Good. Because I mean,
and that's my main point of contention with the story, and I'm interested to see when you get there, and I'll talk to you about it in future episodes. We'll probably do a spoiler cast at some point.
I think that'll probably have to be the move. A lot. Yeah,
yeah,
we'll probably do a spoiler cast instead. But yeah,
my other main gripe with like the storytelling in this game is the way they do it, and it's, I don't know, I hoped in the 5 years we would have progressed a little bit more rather than do a bit of action. We go and chat for a lot. Here's a cutscene. I expected a little bit more environmental storytelling, especially considering they've introduced ruins and the cauldrons are still here. Then you don't learn a lot in those places. Like if I went into those places in another game, you could bet I would learn like a lot of lore as to what this place was. Me being there, like what's the purpose?
You don't feel like you get that from the
little scanning
the
of the cell
collectibles?
phone thing.
Well,
They're okay.
Do you
but
read those things?
I do read them. You have to read them to solve the puzzles because they have codes and like things in them that you need in order to solve the ruins. I listen to them.
I don't know.
I just feel like
I think that's interesting. I always felt like that was something that I thought was good. Like I think finding like the diary entries and like the voice recordings and those kinds of things. Yeah. I like that. I think that's one of the things about Horizon I really actually like a lot. Is that environmental storytelling. But it's funny because the whole like go do a mission and talk to people and like I like that. Like I like that.
I like it too.
Rhythm.
I really do like it, but for me, I'm always inquisitive as to like, well, what was this ruin in the old world? Like, why were they?
Yeah,
what was it? You do get that to some extent. You do get some of it from reading it, but it's not like, oh, this specifically was this and it served this purpose, you know? Yeah. It's just me wanting more from the game in terms of lore, which maybe is a bit unfair on it. Because it does do a great job in storytelling in the main narrative, and the side quests in this game have really stepped up again.
They really have.
They really have. Like, they are incredible compared to the first game.
I think the side characters feel a lot more vibrant. Like not even just like the ones that we already knew, right? Like characters like Varl and Erend who we've talked about. Like I like those guys in the first game. I was like, oh yeah, these are Aloy's bros. They're cool. Like I like them.
They're like main story people, not like the people you'll meet once and then never see again.
Yeah, no, you're like, oh,
help them with an errand.
Yeah, like that was like that lady, and like I went and saved her dad or whatever, and he had a broken hip. Yeah, I remember you, sure. But like I met like
I remember some of them were so basic in the first game. It was like there's a cart that's gone missing and it's been overthrown by monsters.
Help me,
machines. Can you come help me?
And then you see them later, and they're like, "Hey, thanks for helping me." And you're like, "Yeah, no problem, dude."
Yeah,
like, Whereas, like there was a character I met in the first settlement, right? Who's like a cook, and like he's like, I really liked
that one. Yeah.
I like the interaction with him. Like I thought his dialogue was really funny.
His pan looked fine, by the way. I don't know what was wrong with his pan.
It was bent.
Okay to me.
It was bent a little bit, but I liked I liked him a lot, and there's been a lot of characters who have had like little one-liners that I've really gotten a chuckle out of, and some of the environmental dialogue is really funny. Like I had a moment where I was in Chain Scrape, I think it's called, and there's like all these Oseram, and like there's a part where they're drunk and because like they're not working for the day, and there's like these two guys walking down the street like hanging on each other with like bottles of booze or whatever, and the one guy goes, "If I were a sober man, I'd salute you," and just like a lot of funny little bits like that I've been getting a kick out of.
Yeah, the other thing that always strikes me as ridiculous, and it's one of those things you just have to suspend your disbelief because it's video games, is there'll be two people just having a conversation or an argument, and Aloy just goes and sticks her big nose in. It's just like, what's going on here? What are you guys arguing about? Like, what's this conversation? What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's just video games though, right? Like, that's just video games. Because, you know, like, I think of, like, that was, like, a thing in, like, Mass Effect 3 that I remember people would joke about, where it's, like, you'll just hear someone, like, on a phone call being like, I can't find the documents, and then you find the documents, and you're like, here, I brought them, and they're like, oh, thank you, stranger. Like... So, you know, that's I think the instances where I've had that happen so far, it's made sense because it's been people in positions of power, and she's like, hey, I'm famous, you have to listen to me. And it's like, oh, okay, sure. Like, you know, like it was like
you'll literally walk into a town, there'll be like two random strangers just like having an argument about something or chatting, and she'll just go up to them because they've got a green exclamation mark over their head and be like, what are you guys talking about?
Seems to be the problem over here.
Seems to be the problem
here. Yeah. Would you need some help from a hero like me? Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think for my money, I've always thought the writing in Horizon was really good. I think that people zero in on what they want Aloy to be rather than like thinking about all of the extremely interesting things that are happening around her and the interesting like inner struggle that I feel like she's going through, you know? So
Yeah.
your mileage
I'm
may
there for
vary,
the
but
world. Yeah.
I don't think there's any universe that's ever done a past storyline that I've been as satisfied with as this one. Like, I genuinely care as much about learning anything about the history of the world of Horizon as much as I am knowing about what's going on in the present day. And I'm equally interested in both of those things. And yeah, I do think, I thought the one thing that Zayd said, right, where it's like, it seems like a generic open world IMO. I just think that's like the funniest thing when people say that, because it's like, bro, this world has big robot dinosaurs. That's already makes it way more fun and visually interesting than so many open worlds, in my opinion, you know? So, yeah, I think for me, the elevator pitch of the world has always been one that rung true, you know? And if it's not for you, it's not for you. So, one of the things that you've got here is performance or fidelity mode. How have you been getting on with that? Because, you know, for me, I'm performance mode all day. You know, I don't ever do fidelity mode.
I chopped and changed between them, right? Because it's one of those games where, you, unlike, say, Forza Horizon, you don't have to restart the game in order to enjoy the switch between the two.
Yeah.
And you can definitely see some visual differences in like level of detail and like draw distance and things like that. But my God, I cannot play in fidelity mode. It's awful. It doesn't even feel like 30 frames per second to me. It probably is, but when you come from 60, it's like walking through honey, and it looks jerky and horrible. I'm
too used to it now.
Performance mode.
Yeah, because I had the same thing where like the first time when you're in that first section with Varl, right? I was like moving the camera, and I was like, oh, this feels slow. And I went and like changed the camera sensitivity, and I was like, oh, what's going on? Like, this still doesn't feel right. And I was like, performance mode. There you go. And I was like, oh, there we go. That's all I needed. It's immediately better. Yeah, so, and I turned off motion blur because I always turn off motion blur because I think motion blur makes everything look worse. But
no, motion blur in this is fantastic. I've not had any issues with it. I also picked, because you get to pick at the beginning, I picked the Explorer mode for both of them rather than the guided mode.
Oh, yeah. How do you like that?
I initially started with the guided mode, and it was annoying me because it would put these little tips of exactly where to go at any given time. I switched it over to Explorer mode, and it basically goes for that Skyrim style system where you have the compass at the top and you just walk towards the area you want to go, and it's not showing you the path through the world. You like carve your own way through the world, and whatever way you want to go, you can make your way there rather than it kind of showing you the quickest route to get there. It's kind of like a sat nav, which I didn't really appreciate, so I turned that off straight away and switched back over.
Maybe I'll try with that. I've got it on guided right now just because I was like, well, yeah, I want waypoints. Like, yeah, of course.
You still get them. You get them in the compass at the top, and you still get waypoints when you're on a quest if there's a specific point to go to. I recommend trying Explorer mode. I definitely appreciate it a little bit more.
I'll give it a go.
There was also a couple of other settings I changed. One setting I 100% recommend everyone changes is the standby screen mode. Set it to instant. That when you fast travel, rather than having to click X on that hint screen, it just takes you there. You're instantly there. It's just
really?
Like turn it off. It makes fast travel so much better.
And I
also love gyro aim.
Well, let's talk about put a pin in gyro aim for a second. I want to talk about the fast travel because we had a question here from one of our Patreon supporters, Smoky Shake, who wrote in and said, do you know if there's an unlimited fast travel pack upgrade like there is in Horizon Zero Dawn? The limited fast travel is my biggest gripe in the original. Also, I'm curious to see if your thoughts on Splatoon gyro changes after you've used it in Horizon Forbidden West. So there we go. Absolute slam dunk, Smoky Shake. Thank you so much for this perfect transitory question. So there, to my knowledge, there is not an unlimited fast travel pack upgrade. It doesn't exist, but you're able to fast travel for free to campfires that you've unlocked as long as they're
any campfire
to any other campfire.
Yeah,
right.
Whereas in Horizon Zero Dawn, you had to use a fast travel pack to go to a campfire you've unlocked. So they've changed it significantly. So much so.
You still do need that, though, if you're not at a campfire, right? Just to be clear.
Yeah, but I am 20 hours in and I've never used a fast travel pack. You do not need them. They are pointless in this game. The abundance of campfires in the world is quite frankly ridiculous. You'll be at one and there'll be another one like 150 footsteps away from you. You do not ever need to use a fast travel pack. So if this was like your main gripe in the first game, which I know it was for a lot of people, myself included, I made sure I bought that golden fast travel pack
as soon as you could.
As soon as I could. It's really cleaned up nicely in Horizon Forbidden West. And then for the gyro, I love that setting, Pete. You should really try it. It makes it so much. I'm a convert. I hated gyro in Splatoon. So I don't think I will go back and try it, Smokey, because it's all or nothing in Splatoon. Like, you can go left and right with the stick, but up and down, it's entirely gyro. In this, it's only when you're aiming, so it's only when you're holding the left trigger or you're in focus mode. And you can use the right stick freely, you can move around as normal, and it's for those micro adjustments. And it's just so perfectly calibrated that you just make those precision movements when you're trying to target a specific component on a
okay,
machine,
I could see
example.
That being useful.
You just you get as close as you can to it. You've pushed R3 and you're in concentration mode, and you just make that minor correction, and it is perfect. I absolutely love it. I'm a gyro convert.
I'll give it a shot.
To this game.
I'll give it a shot. That's huge. Okay, so this is a good transition question here. Trendy Brenny, another one of our Patreon supporters, wrote in and said, what would you say is the biggest improvement in this game over its predecessor? Are there any quality of life features that are such big game changers it'd make going back to the original tough? So, Steve, you're further in than me. I think you probably will have a better answer for this. I think in my experience, right, like in the first, couple hours of the game, which is, kind of this intro area that I'm in, I very much feel like it's gated in such a way to only have like a lot of the tools that you had in the original, right? So like it is kind of like reacquainting you with how to play before it starts introducing new toys. So in terms of like what I've experienced, I think in general things just feel snappier. Like I feel like Aloy's movement feels like a lot like it's the same, but like I've noticed I feel like some of the like melee combos feel a little bit better, and like I'm very interested like to keep working my way through the skill tree, because I feel like in the original game a lot of the skill upgrades were like you either unlocked specific new things or you got like buffs, and it seems like there's a lot of melee combos that I'm like interested in trying to like get into that and seeing if that kind of makes that feel deeper.
You've got full-on trees now for each category. There's like five or six categories, which you didn't have before. So there's like traps, overriding machines, basically ranged combat and melee combat, and then like health and general stuff. I like it. I do like it. I don't think we needed a skill tree. I don't think any game really needs a skill tree. But it's nice that you can kind of pick the way you go. I'm very much a stealth player, so I put a lot of it into that like stealth skill tree and have focused a lot on that. But the melee stuff is really cool. I do really appreciate that.
I've been focusing on the hunting one mostly, like getting the bow skills and stuff. That's usually that's my go-to.
That's probably my second one that I go for, is the hunting one. I think the biggest improvement in this game over its predecessor is probably the quality of the quests, and then aside from that, quality of life features.
Stash. Absolutely the stash. The stash rules. So
you can go then to the stash. So in the first game, when you picked things up, it was just like you couldn't pick any more of the medicine up or any more of the wood. Now it just goes to a stash, and then anytime you're in town, you can just collect it, and it's there, and you can just recharge your resources, which is awesome.
Stupid convenient too, because like literally you open up the chest and there's like you can go through and pick specific things, or there's just a button to be like replenish everything that I have in my pack, and it'll just move everything over. So like
yeah,
it makes it so quick. And I know something that I used to run into in the first game a lot would be like, oh yeah, like I don't have any medicinal herb, but there's not a lot on this part of the map, right? So like, fuck, now I don't have as much as I want, and it's like, but I'll be in an area where there's tons of it.
Yeah, but you can carry 12, and you can also have some in a pouch now. And then when you hold the up arrow, it recharges and replenishes from the pouch.
That's what I mean, is that in the original...
But it doesn't come directly from your stash. It comes from a pouch. And you have to fill that pouch up again. So there is a little bit more resource management, but you don't have to do what you were saying, where it's like, oh, I've got to go to a whole different area of the map and grind and find a bunch of these like medicinal berries, and then I can carry them with me. And you can also craft potions as well. Like there's a ton of different types of potions you can make. There's all sorts of new things you can craft, which is really cool.
The potions work about the same as the original, where it'll be like they take a little bit longer, but you can like get overhealed and stuff like that. So you can kind of like do a little bit of prep and stuff like that, which is cool. Something that's interesting about like the health mechanic.
But there's also food as well, right? While we're talking about the health stuff.
Yeah.
You can go to the cook and he'll give you something. You can like buy things which you can then eat, and it gives you like a bit of a buff. Like some of them will give you extra health or extra stamina or extra concentration, and it's for like a specific like period of time, like 2 minutes or something.
Right. Very akin to some of the excuse me, like the food buffs in like Breath of the Wild. But yeah, something that's interesting too is like with the health, the way it used to work was you would press up and it would proportionally drain your medicine resource for health, whereas now it's like in blocks. So like it's you can hold like 10 right now. I have right, and it'll just give you health in that regard. So it's interesting. Whereas like you used to maybe like top your health up, right, so that you could carry as much medicinal as you could find at any given time. Now it's like there is a little bit more of that like resource management there, which I do like. But in general, I feel like I appreciate that I'm rewarded for collecting things as I find them, right? Like if there's sticks, I pick up everything of sticks, and I have like 500 in my cache right now, right? I'm not going to run out of arrows anytime soon. But I like that, you know, and it also helps when you're like hunting, right? Where like I'm out and I can be like, okay, well, I know I need, you know, raccoon skin or whatever to upgrade this pouch. So let me hunt as every single thing I come across while I'm going from point A to Z, and I'll just hoard stuff so that in the future when I need this thing or that thing or this thing, I have it, you know? And I've already run into side quests where it's like, oh, I need 5 pieces of wild meat. And I'm like, oh, cool. No worries. I already got it. Here you go, dog. Like, you know.
And I even had it where Aloy said, literally straight away, she said, oh, I've already got X. I just need to go and find Y.
Yeah, I had that.
And I thought it was so cool that like she knew instantly the game had that bit of dialogue pre-programmed in, like knowing it's little details like that. That's so cool.
I've noticed a lot of that. There's a lot of little, like she talks to herself a lot more and gives little like kind of tidbits like that, which is cool. There's like a lot of
I was stuck
dialogue.
on one of the environmental. I was stuck on a couple of the environmental puzzles, and she'd be like, "No, I can't climb up that way. I need to find another way to go around, or I need to get across the water, but I don't think I can do it right now." And like she will give you hints if you get stuck, which is really nice, and it feels a little more natural than possibly another implementation of showing something on a screen or just having a bit of text or whatever. Yeah. I do appreciate it. And then the only other one is the glider.
Oh, I can't wait
the
to get
glider
that.
really changes the way you play this game, because I remember playing the original alongside Breath of the Wild, and I would jump off of areas and I would miss not having a glider. And,
I did that.
She would just fall to her death.
I did that so often, where I would just be like, "Oh no, wrong game."
Yeah. Whereas now you have the glider, functions exactly the same Breath of the Wild and any glider in any game like Fortnite. So it's really nice. It's a nice addition. I really much appreciate it.
Very nice. I think you already said the quests. I think that's another big one, but I also feel like in general, I feel like I can't say enough how visually stunning this game is. It looks so nuts. Like there are times where the environment is so detailed it's distracting. Like, where it's like I'm like scanning for a resource and I'm like, oh my god, look at these fucking flowers. Or like
the level of detail in the foliage is crazy.
I had a situation, I was like walking through a river and I stopped moving so I could look at things, and I noticed fish were like coming around my legs, and then I moved and they all scattered, and I was like, Jesus Christ, like there's so much going on. It's nuts. I think it probably takes the cake for me in terms of best looking PlayStation game. I think I probably would have said Ghost was the best one before now, and I think this, I'm like, this is beautiful.
It's next level. I feel like this is the like next gen experience I've really been waiting for.
Yeah.
I don't feel like anything comes close to looking as good as this. And I can't wait to see what we're looking at in 7 years' time when the PS5's at the end of its lifetime, and it's just like, wow, how the hell did we manage to get this out of this
Horizon
system?
3, baby. I think something I've been pretty impressed about too, which I think is like a very like major improvement over the original, is I think the facial animations are like a lot better. I think the first game, Aloy looked good,
Uncanny Valley,
and everybody else had
NPCs.
had a bit of that Uncanny Valley, like kind of like, not that any of the models looked bad, they were just like a little bit like plain faced, you know? Yeah, stiff is a good word for it. Whereas now I feel like the facial acting of each character feels a lot better. Like there's that scene when you go to the top of the spire and like you have a conversation with Silence early on. And like she goes through, like she's angry and then she goes and she like calms herself down and she starts thinking, and you like watch her go through all of these emotions like beat to beat, right? Like you see her calculate through all the feelings that she's having, and then she's like, okay, like I know what I need to do. It's time to move on. And it's like, it feels like we're getting closer and closer to, you know, and like this is something that like Naughty Dog has kind of done well for a while, but like I don't feel like a lot of other people have had that same level of like, you know, being able to bring what a real actor can do on camera or on stage, right, to mocap performance, you know? And we're not quite there, like but it's
I don't know. I feel like we're finally delivering on the promise that LA Noire offered like, all those years ago. Like you'll be able to discern exactly what they're thinking just by looking at their face. Like I feel like we could actually do that in this game rather than in LA Noire, where it's just ridiculous. But like the level of detail on Aloy's face as well, and all of the characters in general, is just phenomenal.
Yeah, like
you can see like the fuzz and like the she
has like splotches in her skin that like change too. Like I've noticed where it was like, oh, she goes into
a cold area.
Yeah, like she was in a freezing spot, and her face was like red and flushed because it was cold, you know. And I was like, holy shit! Like what the, like that's such an insane attention to detail for like very, you know, they're things that are minor, right? But like I think that's what, you know, what Horizon does so well, right? And it's like I think that really extends to the machine designs this time around, like. Some of them are really, really cool, and just the way that they move. Not that they weren't cool and didn't move dynamically before, but it's like they up the ante in a way that I am surprised by, because it's like I knew we would get different machines, right? But they feel more advanced. Like they feel smarter. Like they feel like they're able to move in more like surprising ways. Like we talked about the thing that's replaced the Watchers, that like they're like meerkats. What are they called? Burrowers, yeah. And like the fact that they have like 4 different kind of unique attack patterns based on like how you approach them and how far away you are, and are there other ones nearby? Like it's very interesting. You know, like I feel like their AI is a lot more advanced, which is, I know, something they talked about a lot, was like wanting to make the enemies smarter and more dynamic, and I'm feeling that already. You know, I'm excited.
Definitely feels harder.
Yeah, which is great, because I mean I'm playing on normal, and like I'm having to try, you know, which not to say that the original was easy, because I definitely think in the beginning it was tough, but I think a lot of games on normal, right, like I'm just kind of breezing through it, right, whereas early on I'm like, okay, I can't play this game like I played Horizon Endgame, right, where I can just run up and fuck everybody up. It's like, okay, no, like I should sneak by this machine. I can't fight this right now. I don't have the resources I need, or, or maybe I do, but it's going to be like a 45-minute fight, like, whatever, that kind of thing. I appreciate that. Like, I think the power scale is something that Horizon does really well, where you go from feeling like you need to really think about every encounter to being like, all right, if I continue to upgrade myself and invest in my character and do side quests, like, I'm going to get to a point where I'm just wrecking shop,
I feel like there's a lot more strategy involved as well. I can't remember because it's been so long since I played Horizon. But if there's like certain points where the enemy will be, say, strong against acid, and if you hit it with an acid thing, it's not going to do anything because it shoots acid itself.
It was definitely like
There'll be
that
a
in the
specific
first one.
point, but there's a specific point on its body where it holds its acid, and if you hit that one small area enough, it will like overcharge, and then it causes a chain reaction that then basically covers it in acid, and now you can just attack it like crazy. And I don't remember that kind of thing in Horizon Zero Dawn, but it may have been there.
It was there. I don't know if it was necessarily locked to the elementals, but I remember like you would be able to, like, if it was like there was like the birds that had the frost powers, and you could hit their canisters and then they would get frozen and hit the ground. So there are a lot of those interactions, but I think they're just, there's more of them now, I think, and it's like there are more points of attack, and I think that like you have even more choices than you did before. But as somebody who did replay the game last year, yeah, like that element of strategy was definitely there, but I think they've done a good job of iterating on it and kind of making it even deeper and more dynamic, which is, I think that's kind of the name of this game, right? Like we said, there was a conversation going on our Twitter where I think Olaf made the point, like, or I'm sorry, no, it was Asobi. If you didn't vibe with the first one, this one will probably not change your mind. I think that's probably true.
No, it definitely won't. It feels like the same game to some extent. Like it could. I don't think there's anything fundamentally different about this game. I don't think it's changed the game. It feels very much like a sequel, which it is. But I think if people were hoping for like a change in the storytelling, or like a change in the open world, or Aloy to suddenly change overnight, none of that's going to be there.
No, I think
I don't want it to be there as a fan of the original.
I love
game.
the original.
I got exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, which was more, bigger, and better, right? And I think that's what this is. Like, it's very much delivering on the promise of the original and asking the question of like, well, how can we iterate and improve on this? And I think for my money so far, everything I've interacted with, I think it has done that. It has improved and it has upped the ante. Yeah, so I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So we're both playing on PS5, so I don't know how well it performs on PS4, but I do want to talk about the DualSense, because I don't know about you, was extremely disappointed that the adaptive triggers are just like not used almost at all. I was expecting a lot more from them. I thought, when they were talking initially about the DualSense and like explaining what it did, it was going to be like, well, think about how the tension's going to change when you're pulling on a bow and arrow. It's not there. No, it's not there at all. It's very much, it still feels linear. Like it can be a little bit trickier, but every weapon still feels the same. I'm doing melee combat. It still feels the same. I'm just pressing like a trigger. The only time you'll get it a little bit is when you're prying open a door or something else that you haven't got yet, so I won't spoil it. And for me, that's just disappointing. I thought I was going to get more. The haptic's really cool. Like I'm going through grass and I can feel when I'm in the grass and when I'm not in the grass, just based on it moving and being there. But the adaptive triggers, I was gutted, because I was like fully expecting to come into this and feel that like tension, or like I've got to click through to finally shoot the arrow, and I can just hold it in tension and then click, but it's not there. You don't get any of that.
Yeah, I think I do think that the DualSense, like the haptic stuff, is good. Like I think that bit has been working for me. But yeah, the triggers I don't think are very like. It doesn't really feel like there is the same level of thought put into it here as like what we praised in Ratchet and Clank, for example, where it felt like that really, really affected the way in which the weapons kind of operated. I wonder if that is potentially having to do with the fact that the game is cross-gen, right? And that like it was maybe just like that was a feature that didn't get explored as much as it may have. If it was only being
but I mean, gyro aim's exclusive on PS5. It's not in the PS4 version. I would have thought that this like headline feature of the DualSense would have really been front and center of their mind. I just expected like my hunter bow and my precision bow and my bolt caster and my trip caster to all feel a little bit different. Yeah, they all function a little bit different. And they all feel the same, and they're all linear, and there's no like tension put in on them. Yeah, and that's fine. But I don't know. I just was expecting it to be there, and it wasn't.
I think that's ultimately where I come down on that. Is like, it doesn't really matter to me that much. I feel like that is like a very much like a nice to have. Like when it works the way it does in Ratchet, it's like, oh wow, fuck, like that's really cool. But like, when I'm playing this game moment to moment, that's not what I'm thinking about, right? Like I'm thinking about all the other stuff that we've talked about. Like I'm engaged in the combat. And yeah, I don't know, like with Ratchet, it's an easier game. So I feel like those kinds of bells and whistles matter a little bit more to me in something like that, where I'm like, oh, every one of these fights is easy. So like the experience of pushing the buttons, like I want a little more out of that, I guess. Whereas in this,
but the really weird thing is, Pete, like there's an option in the settings for like the triggers and the weapons to like tone it down. And I'm just like, it's not even fucking there. So like, what am I turning down? Like there are sliders to whether it was meant to be there, whether it's a bug, whether it didn't make the cut for the.
Well, I mean, that's the thing launch. Is they are there. It's just it's subtle. It's like it reminds me a lot subtle, of. Yeah. It reminds me of the way it was in Spider-Man, right? Where it's like, well, it's literally there. Like I can feel it. I can show you where it's happening, but like it's not that big a deal. But like if you're somebody who like has a disability, like you might need to just turn it all the way off, right? Or like maybe you need to turn it down.
You can turn it off at a system level as well, which is good.
But the slider,
I think about Ratchet though, right? And I love the fact that I can like hold the weapon at a specific point, like the shotgun, and then when I want to go, it's like click. Bang, and it's like that sense of like click. And I do the melee combat in this. And I target R1, 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 and then I want to do my combo and get the R2 in, and the R2 just feels mushy without the like adaptive triggers. It just feels so mushy.
And it's like you could see how that would be applied in a cool way, right? Like in a game that's like about like fighting these big metal machines with like spears and arrows. Like you can think about how you could have it like, oh, this has like a hard hull and like you hit it and it like bounces off and like you feel it lock and like things like that. Like I could see that, but it's also like, this game is really big. There's a lot of things in it. And if that was a core feature, does that take away from these other elements that they wanted to explore and build on? And you only get so much time, right? And the game got delayed already.
Don't get me wrong, it's not like make or break. It's not like, oh, it's not in this game, so I'm not going to play it.
No, I know what you mean though.
I just remember distinctively that example that they gave
of the bow and arrow,
demonstrating that you'll say the bow and arrow, and I was like, I went into this thinking this is going to be the game, right? Because it's bow and arrow, it's their headline game, and it wasn't there, and I was like, oh man, that's just really disappointing to me. But I played 20 hours of this game in 3 days, and it's not detracted from the experience. So don't like take away from this that the game is terrible because it doesn't have DualSense features.
Yeah, I mean, please, I think if you're like a new listener, right? Like, shoot, the fact that Steve played 20 hours of a game in 3 days is the highest praise he can offer. Steve burns out on most games in like 10 hours.
And there was another little thing that made me laugh, and it made me think of the because I think we know from some leaks that Sony want all of their first party games to use all of the features of their controllers, right? So they've
Sure.
got the gyro aim in, they funneled that into tucked it away in the settings, turned off by default. They've got the haptics and they've got the adaptive triggers, which is subtle, but it's there.
It's there.
The way they implemented the touchpad is the UI hides some things, like the names of the items down in the bottom left, and to show them, it comes up with a little tooltip once. I've seen it once throughout
Slide
the whole
up.
game, which is swipe up on the touchpad to view the full HUD, and I'm like, who cares? Like, literally, it shows as soon as I tap a button to change what item I've got equipped.
That's so
It
funny.
was so funny to me. I'm like, they've definitely done this just to shoehorn this, to tick off that we used the trackpad in the game.
Yeah, we did it. There you go. So we had another question here. This one comes from Andy Radford, who wrote in and said, how was the installation process when upgrading to the PS5 version? So I thought this was funny because Steve, I have to check myself when things like this happen. Because whenever people run into technical issues that I haven't seen, I'm always so surprised, right? And it's like, oh yeah, like, I mean, I've never seen this before. And I know you've had all this trouble with installations here and there, and I know you had some trouble with this one. From my perspective, it was extremely easy. It was like very, very simple. The only thing that was screwy was the PS5. You're not able to buy the PS4 version on the PS5.
So jank.
So I bought it on the browser PSN store and then went to my PS5 and downloaded the PS4 version and then realized I couldn't get the PS5 version at launch. So at midnight, I just turned the download on and left it on, and that was that. So it was very easy for me. It was, a little obtuse on PlayStation's part because they didn't want me to do it and save the $10. But aside from that, I didn't have any problems.
So I'm really happy you had no problems. It took me 10 hours to install this game, and I had it on disc.
Part of that is your terrible internet, to be completely fair. But yes.
So I got the PS4 version on disc, which comes with the free PlayStation 4 upgrade, and it arrived. I put it in, put the play disc in, and I said on Twitter, the PS5 upgrade process was seamless. I put the play disc in, I clicked the download button for the PS5 version. It was seamless. I jinxed it. I went out for 3 hours. I put it in rest mode, where, by the way, it does download if you have the setting checked to maintain internet connection. At least it's supposed to. I came back 3 hours later thinking, my game will have installed by now. I know it's 98 gigabytes, but it'll at least be a good chunk all the way through. I've not been home. No one's been streaming Netflix or on the internet. No one's been home. It had failed to download, and I had this exact same problem with Spider-Man. And apparently, Afi also had the same problem with multiple PlayStation 5 games. I googled it since. It's a problem with rest mode. If you put your console in rest mode, and for some reason it loses an internet connection intermittently, when you go to turn it back on, you cannot restart that download. You have to start from scratch.
Oh, really?
So I got 70%. I got 70% of the way through that download. It had downloaded 70 gigabytes.
Can you imagine if you had a data cap? Oh no, that's so bad.
So I downloaded it, started from
PSA.
scratch. Initially, it wouldn't even let me do the download. I went to view it on the store again because I'd already redeemed the download, I guess, from the play disc because it was an upgrade. So I then had to go and find the game on the PlayStation store, and it said I had to pay £60 or £70 because it was the PS5 version. I was like, what the fuck? I clicked through, then it said can't find what you're looking for. I kept having issue after issue. I restarted the console. I went back to it. I was able to download and start from scratch. I left it. I just left it on, and I turned over and I used my TV on another channel. I think I did my Ring Fit for the day, and I went back, and I had the red exclamation mark with "can't install again," And I was like, are you fucking joking? And my response was, oh, fuck it, I can't be bothered to play it anymore. And I managed to restart that time because I hadn't gone in rest mode. It let me restart the download. So I was at like 80 gigabytes of 100 downloaded. I started installing at like midday. I was able to start playing the game at 10:30 at night. It was ridiculous.
Buddy,
it was preposterous.
That is so bad. Oh my God. Yeah. So PSA for that setting to turn that off for sure. But yeah, oh my God. I was shocked to find out how terrible your internet is compared to mine. Because that entire download took me 40 minutes.
You're fucking joking. It was going to take like 5 hours. But because I had to start from scratch, it ended up taking 10. And it was ridiculous. So, but
you know how it gives you
your internet.
You know how it gives you the estimate? It'll be like, oh, it'll take like this long. So so what happened to me was, like I said, right, at midnight, I turned on the PS5 download. So I had intentionally stayed up to midnight to do that because I was already like feeling tired at that point. So as soon as midnight hit, I turned it on, I went up to go to bed. And 20 minutes later, right? Oh, and the estimate it gave me was like, oh, it's like going to be like 50 minutes. And I was like, all right, cool, it'll be ready for me tomorrow. And I got upstairs and I laid down for like, 10, 15 minutes. And then I was like falling asleep, but I realized I had forgotten my water. So I was like, all right, let me go grab my water. So I'm like 20 minutes later and it's like, oh, the download's already like almost done, like sick. And I was like,
oh my God.
Do I stay up and play this game right now? Nah, I'll go to bed.
Oh, that makes me sick. Genuinely, it was awful experience. And I know part of it is my internet, but the fact that
the 5 hours part of it
cannot be restarted, downloads cannot be restarted when they've been in rest mode is just ridiculous. Like,
that's not
off. I've turned that shit off. Auto sleeps off. I'll put it in rest mode when I want to put it in rest mode now. It's broken, and PlayStation need to fix it because it's not just me. Multiple people have had this issue. And I'm glad Afi was able to point me in the direction of the fact that it's rest mode. And if you don't put it in rest mode, then you won't have an issue. So I owe a deep gratitude to Afi for telling me that.
I know that a lot of people have had issues with the rest mode stuff. And it's not true of every console. Because I know like I don't have that problem. But just PSA, if it's something you've never tried before, it definitely can happen. So watch out for that one.
Yeah, I also found out it will not copy from a disc in rest mode. It will download, but it won't copy from a disc. So if you bought the PS5 version of this game and it automatically goes to sleep, you'll come home and it will not be installed. It will not be copied from the disc. Rest mode is a nightmare. I do not understand why this is even the way it works.
I don't know. That's a weird one. But, hopefully it's something they can still iron out, and it's not just
it should easily be software patched.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that. It's just minor things. But
yeah,
it's those things that just ruin an experience for you and makes you go, next time I'm going to buy the game on Xbox. Like if it was available there, like next time, I'm not going to buy any multi-platform games on PlayStation anyway because of smart delivery. But the fact that I have all of these issues even downloading a game that I've never had on Xbox or on Switch or even on PS4, I don't understand why it's such an issue for PS5.
Yeah, you've had some bad luck because I've literally never had a problem, not once.
I know, and tons of people on Twitter have said never had this issue. I don't know what it is. Like that was really the consensus. Was I was like the oddball here, but
it's also like though
had the same issue.
I think about the issue that that your dad had with his Xbox, right? And it's like, well, I've never seen that before, right? And it's like that's apparently a thing that has happened to a bunch of people. So it's like they all have.
Yeah, like I know it happened to Jeff Grubb's Xbox,
and it's like. Obviously, the Switch has its own myriad of problems where, like, it had that issue with, like, the Wi-Fi chip that didn't work, and there's Joy-Con drift. So, that's part of the part and parcel
problems,
of, like, buying a launch console, right? It's like, well, we don't know. Like, we're all going to find out what the weird quirk is, and it's Russian roulette whether or not you got one of the good ones. And, knock on wood, I haven't had any problems yet. But, it's like every one of them has their weird little idiosyncrasies. So I feel like the best thing you can do, especially with like something like this where it's like a known problem, is like just take whatever steps you can to avoid it getting in your way and fucking up your evening with like Horizon or whatever the next game is that you wanna pop in. So yeah, turn off that rest feature. It's not good. All right, so we'll close out the show on this question from Yarno, aka Olaf from the Discord, who wrote in and said, after the success of Forbidden West already, what's next for Guerrilla? Will they be focusing mainly on the Horizon series, or do you hope that they'll try something else with the same ambition of Horizon Zero Dawn / Forbidden West?
I think it's about time they go back to Killzone, and I think there was a rumor that they were going to do that.
Not. I really hope not.
I think that's where they go next. If not, which I don't really want them to, because I don't really care for first-person shooters. I hope
I don't know. That world is like how many Killzones did they make? And nobody gave a shit. Like, let's move on. Let's leave that one in the dust. No offense.
No,
but...
either that or I hope it's a new IP. I'd love a new IP from them, because I feel the same way with Naughty Dog. I want new IPs from Sony at this point. Like, look how good they did with the fresh new IP. They took a bet. They did Horizon, and it really paid off for them.
I think, personally, I'd like to see both of those things. So Guerrilla they have 360 employees. They're a pretty big studio. So, we know that they have, Horizon's VR title in development. We know that they are hiring for like a multiplayer experience as well. So I think that they are becoming a studio that is going to have the intention of working on multiple projects at once. And that's ultimately what I'd like to see from them. I think in the way that, like, Naughty Dog had that period where they were like, we're doing Uncharted, and then we're going to do, The Last of Us, and then we're going to do another Uncharted, now we'll do The Last of Us. I would like to see that, because I don't think we're done with Horizon as a franchise by a long shot. I think it's a world that has pretty limitless potential. And unless this story's scope is a lot bigger than I think it is, I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that they're not going to tie off every loose end by the end of this story.
I will say I struggle to see where they go with the sequel at this point. I think you can do it in this world. I don't think you could do it with Aloy. And I feel the same with, like, The Last of Us. I feel like you could do another game in The Last of Us world. I feel like they're running to the end with Ellie over there.
Yeah, maybe. I'll have to see how I feel by the end of the narrative, right? And who knows? You might not feel the same way.
I'm nowhere near the end, by the way. But that's like my view is I don't know. I kind of feel like we don't always. I think they proved with Uncharted, whatever it's called,
Lost Legacy.
With Uncharted Lost Legacy, that a game, it's not just about a character. It's about a lot of things.
It doesn't have to be anyway.
Take the main protagonist away from it, and it can still be a great game. And I think they could do that with Horizon.
Yeah.
The other stuff they're working on, I know, like Fire Sprite's working on the VR thing, so I presume that they're just like a support studio in chat, and someone's working with the assets and stuff. They must have multiple teams working on multiple games at any given time.
With that size of a studio, too, it's like it seems impossible that they're not. I'm sure they're developing new ideas. But yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time thinking that Horizon is done by any stretch of the imagination. They made 5 Killzone games to very little acclaim, and Horizon has been really successful and is, Aloy's become like a marquee character for them. I think as long as Guerrilla is interested in working on Horizon and telling Aloy's story, that they probably will continue to do that. But that doesn't mean that it has to be the next thing that they work on. The idea of them like doing another game and maybe coming back to it, I think is possible, or them breaking off and having a Horizon team that's working on whatever's next for Horizon, and then they have another team that's actively incubating whatever the next idea they want to throw out there is. Eventually you got to imagine that there will be a point where Horizon slows down and goes away for a while, maybe forever, right? It happens all the time. But the idea that it's after 2 games seems crazy. I think they spent so much time investing in this world and developing this intellectual property. I have a hard time thinking that they're going to be like, yeah, cool, that's good enough.
Yeah, and I could agree with that. I mean, we had 3 Uncharted games before Naughty Dog was like, we want to do something else.
Right.
And then they did the A team, B team, and A team helps with the end of B team. Then they swap over, and
right.
I could see them doing that same thing.
And I feel like that's a pretty proven formula, right? Because it's like,
well, yeah, and you got to think there's going to be DLC coming along with this as well at some point.
Yeah, probably.
And I would imagine the multiplayer stuff you were talking about is one of the live service games that they're going to be launching. So
yeah.
There's probably 2 teams there doing that, and then there's probably someone at the moment exploring the next game.
Right. I would imagine. And I know that when they pitched on Horizon, they had other ideas that they didn't move forward on. Who knows? Maybe one of those has been incubating, or maybe they've been thinking about whatever comes next. Studios are always doing that, right? So, yeah, I certainly don't think that Guerrilla is destined to just become the Horizon studio now. I don't think that's like the only thing that they're ever going to do from here on out. But, yeah, I don't know. I think in the same way that, like, even if they never make another Uncharted game, you will always think of Uncharted as like one of Naughty Dog's marquee things, right? Like Horizon is that for Guerrilla. There are obviously fans of Killzone, and I don't mean to, to dismiss that, but I don't think anybody cares about Killzone in the way that people care about Horizon, I know I'm one of those fans, right? Like I'm a huge fan of Horizon. I love the world. And I'm deeply invested in seeing where it goes from here, and what other corners of the world look like. I would be really interested in following stories in this world that aren't about Aloy as well. Like what does it look like in Europe or Asia or South America, or I don't know, right? Like those are all questions that would be extremely interesting to answer, right? And I think like you said, right? Like in the world of The Last of Us, right? Like we only know what it's like in like one stretch of America, and like a little couple other spots we've seen here and there, right? And there's so many question marks outside of the characters that we know. And I think that's an even easier equation in the world of Horizon, right? Because there's so many unknowns. We've only seen like...
Well, I mean, we've seen one of the unknowns in this game. We only saw the east coast of America up until now. And now we're able to go.
We weren't even on the East Coast in the first game. It was still like on the. Shit. It was like I'm trying to think because let me see.
Is it like Central then?
It barely.
I know they mentioned Las Vegas, I think,
which is on the West Coast.
Yeah, that's where they mentioned that they're going to.
So here it is. It says Horizon Zero Dawn is set in the states of Colorado and Utah, parts of northern Arizona, and a very small part of Montana. So that's all like just off the West Coast, like that's okay. Not.
So there's a lot to explore if they wanted to. Like
I've 2/4 of the country that we have not even, we've never seen any of that stuff.
But we know that like the system, the Gaia system was worldwide. It was like a worldwide network, and it would be really cool to see what was going on in Australia, what was going on in Asia.
The fact that across like one state line, there's totally different machines, right? It's like, okay, right. So there's probably a pretty insane amount of biodiversity depending on where you went, right? So there's a ton that you can still do in this world for sure. And I'd like to see a lot more of it, but I also am with you where in general, like as much as, we love sequels to things that we like, new IP is always, I think, more exciting than old IP. So, like I would definitely love to see, them try to do something else that, challenges themselves to think of something new and kind of push the boundaries of what they're capable of doing. But in the same breath, I also don't want to see them stray too far away from it, right? Because like they did first-person shooters and they pivoted to the third-person action-adventure thing. Like that's what I want from them now that they've done it. Like they're still learning how to do it. They've only done 2 games in this genre. And as great as Horizon was and as great as Forbidden West is and has improved all these things, there's still a lot of stuff for them to iterate and improve on. So I'm not super eager to see them like totally pivot and reinvent the wheel and do something that's not at all like Horizon, right? Even if it's in a totally different universe. I'd like to see them continue to develop as an open world studio. Like, I don't really want to see them make a first person shooter, you know?
I don't even think it needs to be an open world game for me, though, to enjoy it. I would be more than happy for them to tell a story in a linear fashion. And
if that's what they want to do, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think that Sony's done with the Horizon IP in the slightest. You know, we've got another 2 games on the way, and I can imagine there's going to be a movie in the works with PlayStation Productions.
I personally think, like, if you were asking me to place my bets today, I think there is 0 chance that we don't get a Horizon 3 to close out the trilogy. I think there's at least one more game with Aloy as the main character if I was a betting man, personally. But we'll see how I feel, 40, 50 hours from now when I roll credits, and we'll see how things, how things land.
Yeah, I mean, I need to see
she could die at the end. Who knows, right? Like,
well, like at the end of the first one, we still had things left not wrapped up.
Yeah,
there was still a sense of urgency in the world. I don't know if at the end of this, because we know what her motivation is at the moment, right? At the end of that, is there going to be anything left to do? Is she going to be successful in that mission at this point? Is something else going to happen?
Right. The thing that I think is interesting about Aloy as a character and kind of the world and everything, though, is that even if the resolution of all of the plot points that were established in part 1 are resolved here, that doesn't mean that her adventures end, right? Like, look at, like, Kratos, for example, right? Like, there are multiple eras of Kratos' story that are all linear, though, right? Like, the Kratos that we know in God of War 2018 has gone through everything he went through in the 2 previous trilogies he was a part of. Those chapters of his life are over, and now he's doing this other stuff, right? Like, Aloy could easily be a character who, when she's like, okay, the world's not ending anymore, right? Okay, well, what could my job be now? I don't know. The exploration and preservation of knowledge, teaching people about the actual history of the world, trying to advance human culture, like, exploring the rest of the country and running into new problems where, oh no, something crazy's happening over here. Like, we didn't think that Kratos would have a son and that would be his next big emotional beat until somebody thought of it, right? And I think she's a character who is enough of a blank slate in the way that Kratos is, where it's like the idea of it being like, okay, Aloy's like that old Western hero where she rolls into town and she helps everybody and then she moves on, and like, we could easily do that, right? Nathan Drake did that for 4 games that have nothing, or 5 games that have nothing to do with each other, really, right? The only thing that has anything to do with anything across those games is that the characters are the same people. But each one, it's like,
yeah, but
there's a new mystery, like, there's a new villain.
Yeah, but we spoke about the character's motivations, and I just don't know what her motivation is at the end of this story as she manages to finish it, right? Like, what's she going to do? Like, maybe that is the story.
That's the thing, right? Is you could have the exact same story, and not exactly the same, but you could tell the same story that you told with Ellie in The Last of Us Part 2, right? Where it's like, oh, like, I fulfilled the thing I was born to do. What do I do now, right? And maybe
their revenge.
Maybe I move back to...
Would you like to see that, though? Would you be happy if Aloy became, like, full of hate?
No,
and
come on.
She just went and destroyed the world?
That's not what I mean. You know what I mean. Like, where it's like, you're this warrior, this explorer, this person with this huge destiny, and you achieve the only thing that you were born to do, the only thing you've worked on your entire life, and you're... what, in your mid-20s? She's like 20, right? Like, she's like 20 years old. And then she has to figure out, okay, well, what do I do from here, right? And I know you've experienced the conversation with Avad, right? Where he's like, oh, like, when you're done with all this, I want you to move back to Meridian and try to, like, live a normal life, and, like, maybe we could be in love or this or that, right? And it's like, I don't think those are things that character knows how to want. And, like, that could be an interesting thing of, like, okay, like, you're done with your destiny, like, what's your purpose in life now?
Do you know, thinking about where the story's going, I could see something happening. But yeah, we'll talk about it once you get to that.
We'll have to have a spoiler cast. I'm gonna catch up to you this week if I can help it.
I'm hoping to finish it this week.
Cool. It sounds like you're on track. So
I don't know how long this game is. I never have any idea how long these games are. I'm 20 hours into the game. Yes, I've done a healthy amount of side quests and things, but like, how long are these games?
I mean, I think it depends on how much you want to do, because I know I've heard people have done a certain amount of side quests and rolled credits at like 30 hours. They've rolled credits at 40 hours. So, I think you'll figure it out, right? You'll get to a point where you're like, I'm leveled up enough and I'm ready to be done, or you'll play obsessively,
Yeah, it looks like on How Long to Beat, it's an average of 40 hours versus like if you just want to do the main story or you actually want to do some other bits and pieces. But if you want to do everything, it's 85 hours.
I might platinum it. We'll see what happens. I didn't platinum the original because I was like, oh god, some of these side quests are a bitch. So we'll see. We'll see if I do it this time around. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the game so far. I'm eager to put more time into it. It's definitely living up to my expectations right now. In terms of what I wanted out of it was, a bigger, better Horizon, and I feel like that's what it's delivered for me so far. So, in the interest of getting back to it with the rest of my evening, we're gonna wrap this episode here. So thank you to everybody who wrote in to be a part of this episode. Remember, you can write in with your questions and thoughts on Horizon or anything else we talk about on this fine program, or something we haven't talked about. If you want to try and inspire a main topic, please feel free, write in. Especially if you've never written in before, I'm gonna issue the challenge to you. All right. If you're a first-time listener, if you're a long-time listener, if you've never written in before, write in next week. Maybe you could become the main topic. How nice would that be? So, thanks again to everybody who contributed. Remember, if you want to do that, there are a bunch of ways you can get involved. Head over to FlipScreen.Games. That is our website where you can find links to our Discord, our email address, our Patreon, all the places we are all over the web. We're making content for you every week, and we hope you'll come be a part of it because we're having a lot of fun, and it seems like you are too. So come ride the ride with us, baby. Until next time, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. We'll catch you next week for the FlipScreen Games Podcast. Take it easy.